want to become the world's biggest MCO.
So it's more interesting to become a sponsor of Wrexham these days than of one of the biggest clubs of the world.
We reached millions of people who are now all of a sudden hearing and talking about this really small club in Cascais.
With MCO, it's a chance to build strength in unity between the teams.
They also want to be part of this miniature Venezia type of story, right?
Welcome to the Estrella Football Podcast. Every month we take you behind the scenes of a new multi-club ownership model. My name is Xander Czaikowski, and together with David Dwinger, we answer one unfiltered question in each episode. Today we are recording a podcast with Alessandro Nuccetelli as our guest, where we ask him why a new ownership model is becoming so interesting for the future of football.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello Alessandro.
Nice to be here.
Good to have you.
Can you tell a little bit about your personal background to us?
I've been working many years in sports, in football. I'm originally from Italy. Been living in London for almost 15 years. And I started my career working for a fund that invested in very big Premier League team, Leeds United. Thanks to that, was exposed to all sectors of the football business, which is very exciting.
And what is your main experience or your main finding from working for?
Yeah, so mostly worked on the M&A side, investments. So back when I joined the fund in London, we were quite excited by at the time it was the English football market, particularly the second division. And I spent many months trying to find the best opportunity for investment, which we did by investing in Leeds United Football Club back when it was in the Championship. So a combination of acquisition and also managing the club to make sure that the operations are optimized and all the stakeholders are really involved to bring the club where it belongs, which in the case of Leeds was the first division, and hopefully it'll be so with many other teams.
And why specifically Leeds United? Why not a smaller team in a lower league division?
We looked at a lot of teams, not just in England. We looked at Italy, we looked at Spain. Leeds, I think at the time was it was called Sleeping Giant. It's a huge club, as everyone knows. I remember growing up watching them play in semi-finals of Champions League football with really important players, and it was an unmissable opportunity to. We identified essentially a team that really could have benefited from different levels of expertise, both on the pitch, but also, very importantly, off the pitch. And thanks to that, we were able to achieve our goal, which at the time was promotion.
So the investment was mainly meant for investing in the sportive side of things?
Both. So we worked a lot on the sporting side. Of course, the team was already very strong on the sporting side. Leeds is one of the best youth academies in Europe. But we also really looked at sporting side, including the women's game, for example. Already back then was very important to us. But then we grew. We're proud to say we grew revenue like 5 times in the first 3 years, commercial revenue. So we did some interesting partnerships with brands. We grew the media side as well, investing in Leeds United Television, which was like the combination of YouTube and linear distribution, offering exclusive content into the club. It was both. It was on the pitch and off the pitch.
If you look at football clubs, effectively they're all the same, regardless of the level, right?
Yeah.
We all have players. They all get injured. We all need to score goals, wash clothes, etc. Have sponsors. Pretty much the same at every level. Just the same problems are bigger. The bigger the club gets. What is the one big differentiator why you guys chose for Leeds and not another one?
Another one? Well, I mean, as an investment, first of all, we thought the dynamics around it made a lot of sense. So the club was like relatively well managed. So we chose also an asset where we thought we could generate a successful, investment story around.
Yeah.
I think, all clubs are the same, but of course there are clubs that have more history than others and more fans. And, in the case of Leeds, it's a one city team. In fact, it's the city itself and the whole catchment area of Yorkshire in England is very passionate about Leeds United.
Yeah.
So we thought we could really do a lot with that. Of course, also, the fact that being one city team is something you can really play both, on Saturday, Sunday at the game, but also when it comes to kids, like every kid in the area was dreaming to play for Leeds. So we really like that the grassroots community aspect of it too.
And did the investor also look into buying into more clubs, like starting in own MCO?
Not really at the time. So I'm still good friends with the former owner of Leeds, Andrea. A really good, visionary guy in football. I'm sure he will do very exciting things in the future. But at the time, our head was very much on this club because it was such a massive club to manage. But yeah, the MCO model in general is something I've always been super, super interested in. Already at the time, City Football Group had launched. Red Bull was already, quite active. So it's something we used as an example in many ways, and we also networked a lot with these guys, especially the Red Bull guys. Red Bull actually became an investor in Leeds United eventually. This was after we sold the club, but we had strong relations with them.
Yeah, it's only a couple of years ago, right? Maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah,
they
it was
entered a
recent.
small, which I remember at the time was quite interesting because before that it was the Red Bull brand that they were focusing on, and now all of a sudden they went into Leeds United, which never going to be Red Bull Leeds or something, right? So
exactly. With Salzburg and these guys, Leipzig, right? They really rebranded.
It's interesting that they.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what do you think of the MCO model? Do you think that that's still future-proof or?
Yeah, I think MCO, as a concept is super interesting. I think we haven't always seen the most sustainable way of doing an MCO model, which is why I think also what is being implemented and studied and, created at Estrella is interesting, the new way of doing it, the horizontal way of doing it. But I think, as everything usually, especially sports, synergies is something that's very important to foster, right? Both on the pitch, off the pitch. So I'm a big believer in it. And, football is a more fragmented sport than other sports are anyway. It's less, there are various federations. Within a federation, you have different leagues. And you have like the grassroots side, you have the women's sports. So I think with MCO, it's a chance to build strength in unity between the teams.
But isn't it specifically interesting to smaller clubs, the MCO model, than to the bigger clubs?
Well, I mean, so far it's been a combination, right? So if you looked at something like what Manchester City did with their sister clubs, whatever you want to call it, some of these clubs are actually huge. Like you look at Palermo in Italy, is a massive club, right? And in the end, that it benefit Palermo as much probably as it's been benefiting City. I don't have the answer whether it's better for the big club or the small club, but for sure I think it's harder for a small club these days to really capture the value in football. I think personally what I see is that there is a strong growth of the whole thing around the Super League, what they were talking about. That's pretty much happening anyway with the FIFA Club World Cup. How can a small club compete with those guys? I'm not sure. Maybe being part of a group, that's probably the answer, right?
Having the access to scale and a broader network and infrastructure.
And fans.
And fans, of course. I think that is one of the things which is going to change significantly over the next years, right? How the next generation is going to consume sports, and specifically football anyway.
Absolutely.
We discuss it very regularly that our kids don't consume football the same way we do, right? Yeah. So they don't sit to 90 minutes of sometimes painstakingly bad football. But they watch 30 seconds of TikTok and they know more about the details than we actually do. So that's I think that's one of the key changes which is coming up in the next decade.
And how can fans benefit from such a model?
I mean, I think fans don't get it, like they don't get the benefit directly, right? It's more like how does the indirect help your club? If you're a fan of a club that's perhaps struggling to establish itself on its own, then maybe being part of a group allows you to grow faster, which ultimately, hopefully means better results on the pitch. I think fans care a lot about everything that's, around the club, the brand, all these activities. But in the end, you still have to play, I think, attractive football, win some games. My whole life I've been a Roma supporter, and I think I had one or two satisfactions. So, yes.
I think here again the model we're building with Estrella, so the horizontal MCO rather than the traditional more pyramid or vertically shaped MCO. I think the horizontal model does have a positive impact on fans, or at least has the potential to do it better than the regular model. Just simply because the traditional model everything goes towards the flagship club, right? So if we talk about City Football Group, everything is towards Pep Guardiola winning another treble. That's the idea, and they're spending $1 billion, maybe more, a year in total to get to that. I don't think that has a direct benefit on the fans. Indeed, if you look at it from what we're building, I think it allows the fans to look broader into their sister clubs as well. That's a challenge we need to cover, of course. But I think it's not going to be easy. But I think that's going to be the cool thing. If we cover that you are a fan because you live in Lisbon, in Cascais, near our club in Cascais. You're a Cascais fan. If you then travel to whatever it is, Spain, and we have a club there, you should have that same feeling almost, even though the country is different, city is different, colors are different, name is different. Yeah. I think our goal is to achieve that the fan feels, oh, this is still my club. And I think it's possible because what we see in changing is that especially the new generation is not necessarily a club fan alone. It's not limited to your logo, right? It's more limited to I'm following a brand, I'm following a player, or etc. So I think it is possible, and I think that's going to be a big benefit of the model we're building. And I'm sure we won't be the only ones for a long time that people see, hey, this is actually quite interesting. You can reach a much broader audience, rather than just your own club. And clubs the size of Leeds and Man U and whatever, they have global fans anyway. Yeah. But again, for the smaller club, I think this is going to be a bigger. Yeah.
And it goes hand in hand with what you said about content consumption too, right? Yeah. So no, I couldn't agree more. I think how many people still sit and watch 90 minutes? Yeah. You know, I still do.
Without watching on your telephone.
Yeah. I still do painfully, you know, but like, you know, if I think about my nephew, 17-year-old kid, watches Roma, also watches a bunch of other teams. Yeah. And if you can engage this kind of fan, then absolutely. Yeah.
So is then the vertical model more suited for the bigger clubs and the horizontal model more suited for the smaller clubs because it's more about the brand and the content, etc. And the vertical model is more about the supporter side of things. Is that the difference between horizontal and vertical?
I think it's still early to say, you know, because vertical is the way that it has been done, but it's also something that started years ago when football was in a different place, right? So if you think about it, back then you could have acquired a much larger club at much less money really than today. So it made sense to do that and then create a feeder ecosystem. Today, for where the industry is going, yes, probably horizontal, I would say. If I was, somebody managing a smaller or medium-sized team, I would look for a group that allow me to build synergies with like-minded peers.
I think I think the traditional MCOs, the big ones, the vertical ones, I think they will start changing their model as well. Because the reason why you would do traditional one is because you want to win a Champions League. Yeah, right. That's why the whole feeder system towards the flagship is put in place. That's an expensive hobby in the end, right? You're chasing something which might not come. I think there's quite some examples of very, very big clubs who've put in billions and billions and actually start winning when they stop doing it, which is very interesting. So I think that model will change, and I think the bigger MCOs will start looking at, okay, what else can we do differently? Still having maybe the same football ambition, but from a monetization, from a fan engagement, from a brand building perspective, I think they will start looking at different models which are more sustainable.
Yeah, and there are new elements today that we didn't have, 10, 15 years ago.
Agreed.
Right? You think about the whole fashion of football now, with people wearing football shirts as fashion items, for example. That's something that, if you build an MCO with like a very clear creative direction, for example, it's something you can apply to different teams, right? So it doesn't have to be just the top clubs doing it.
I don't think, by the way, that every club should become a brand club, right? Because then it's artificial. Yeah. Not all clubs are built for being a brand club, right? But you need to have something as a club, which can be the name. Most of the times it's the name in collaboration with the location. Then it could work wonders, but it's not for every club. I think also if we try to do that, or if clubs try to do that, I think the fans will get bored really quickly if everybody has the best shirt in the world. So I think that will be a split between the clubs who are really focused on football and performance and going for it. I mean, intrinsically, the reason why we do sports is to win as well, right? On this level at least. But a lot of clubs, regardless of the size, they actually have the potential to become big brand clubs.
Absolutely.
Of the fans which wear shirts who are not even in the same country.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think one of the things I saw last summer when I was on holiday in Zanzibar, I saw this guy wearing a Venezia shirt, which I thought was awesome. Right? He was a local guy wearing a Venezia shirt. I actually walked up to him and we started talking about the shirt. He said, "Yeah, I'm a big fan of the brand," and it was really cool to see that. How people on the other side of the world have probably never even been in Venezia. Are wearing that now as brands.
So Venezia is a good example of creating a lifestyle brand, which brings in extra money, of course. Wrexham is another famous entertainment brand, which brings in exposure. And by doing that, of course, helps you as a club finding new sponsors, international sponsors. Isn't the difference then between a horizontal model also not... And the vertical model also not about make a football club financially sustainable, because the one is focusing on creating new revenue streams and the other one is more like, okay, we spend a lot of money on the team and then we'll win the Champions League.
I think it really depends also on the individual characteristics of every club in your MCO, right? Like there are some clubs that are perhaps better suited for, maybe it can be shirts. Some clubs maybe more for media content, like the example of Wrexham is a great one. I think thanks to the synergies they had with the investors there, they could do something very special. But I think indeed it's true that if you start an MCO by having like an anchor asset that comes from winning games and that wants to win more games, then probably you end up having a model that's maybe a bit less sustainable, and then you pump a lot of money in that team and the others work for that team in a way, because if you have a good player from a small team, you just move him or her on. We're still in a phase where horizontal MCO is being born right now, and I think, like for instance, Estrella, what Estrella is doing is quite innovative. And I think we don't have the answers yet, but we know that there are questions that are not being asked yet in football ownership, right?
Yeah. From our perspective on Estrella on this subject is, I think we focus on building sustainable clubs who might still have an ambition to win the Champions League, but only financed by their own commercials.
Yes.
Right. I think if you do that, then there's no limit to what you can do effectively. But we speak to clubs like 4 or 5 times a day, right? We get offered 4 or 5 clubs a day.
Yeah.
And I think Xander, you spoke to one yesterday or the day before, where very interestingly we're talking about the finance side of that club, and that specific club spends, out of every euro in revenue, they spend €1.30 on one line item of all the cost, which was on the first team.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very interesting way to look at football, right? I'm not sure what type of economics are. No, of course not.
Is it healthy? No, it's not healthy.
It's a big gamble.
It's insane.
Right?
Yeah, and I personally think that the vertical MCOs are really focusing on short-term results by investing a lot of money in the player squad. And of course it can bring you success, but it is also a big risk, because if it doesn't bring success, and you actually see now a lot of MCOs getting out of football clubs where they spend a lot of money and that didn't bring them any success.
Yeah.
And then basically you leave the club behind, like completely ruined.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So personally, I think that the traditional way of running a football club, where it's more on the focus on the sporting side of things, is actually broken.
Yeah.
So you should, as a club, really transform yourself into a brand, because people, the younger generation, follow brands more than clubs itself. But also by doing that, you create, of course, new revenue streams, and that's really important, because the revenue streams will bring you additional revenue, not only to buy new players, but also to invest in facilities and in better people.
Yeah,
which is one of the things we directly started when we bought into Cascais last year. The location was great. The name is great, right? Yeah. It's beautiful. From a performance perspective, from a promotion perspective, it's quite challenging, right? So we're 25 minutes away from Benfica Sporting, and Estoril is like 15 minutes away. The ambition for Cascais to promote is there, absolutely. Will we ever play in the first division? Very unlikely, because of the close proximity to the other clubs. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing there is, again, not falling into the trap of just putting money in it and hoping to promote. Mm-hmm. We really look at how can we get a club as small as Cascais into a position where they can actually afford to have slightly better players. And one of the things there, I think, which has a direct impact on the club and subsequently the players and subsequently the fans, is we implemented this commercial model we call Play Like a Pro, where we have players from the Nordics, from Canada, from the US coming into Cascais, living there 3, 6, or 9 months with different packages, which include sports, of course, physiotherapy, food, home, housing, everything, generating significant money for a club like Cascais, allowing the club to get players now from divisions 1 or 2 times higher who now want to play at our club.
Yeah.
So it's like this vicious cycle, right? You implement something which impacts the club. You do something with the brand, with the story. All of a sudden, players come to, hey, I want to play for your club.
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit more about the brand, because that's actually interesting, specifically about attracting players and what basically Cascais, before we invested into Cascais, were not able to attract new players, and now they are able to do.
Yeah. So Cascais is known for its rugby, right? And Cascais rugby plays on the highest division in Portugal. That's what it's known for, not necessarily for its football. So when we joined the club, we looked at, okay, how can we? Because on the other hand, it's also like a 115-year-old club. Right, so it's not something you easily change from a brand perspective. So we looked at the location, at the history of Cascais, or the stories back in the day during the First World War, etc. And it's quite a cool story, and their position in that history, and the fishermen and the harbor, etc. So we looked at the brand and how can we upgrade that brand, maintaining its heritage and its history and the identity, but still getting it slightly new, slightly better. And we started talking about it with relevant people. A great agency helped us to achieve what we wanted to do. And we implemented this now, I think started 3 months ago with the new brand. So the shirt, Xander is wearing the new shirt. We teamed up with Robij, Dutch company, one of our partners, and the logo is actually the same but slightly different. Mm-hmm. And you really need to compare it to see the difference. But that whole design and the story behind the shirt and the brand had a direct impact, because all of a sudden the attention was not just coming within the club. People in Cascais started noticing it. People in Lisbon area started noticing it. We got invited to do talks for very big newspapers and radio stations, etc. So by changing something small but significant, we reached millions of people who are now all of a sudden hearing and talking about this really small club in Cascais. And I think that's when the second we did that, the phone started ringing. Yeah. Right, for players, from agents, of course, wanting to get their players to play for us. And Cascais is a 6th division club, guys.
Yeah.
But the level is not like
the level is not like a 6th division. I think we're actually literally 2 divisions too low at this moment. Yeah. So I think we're actually more, from a Portuguese perspective, probably D4. Yeah. If you compare it to the Netherlands, it's probably D3, Division 3. But the cool thing is, because, again, we're making a lot of noise about this beautiful club, players want to come in, right? So we've now got I think 1 or 2 guys who actually come from D4 clubs in Portugal who came to our club. They moved to live in the Cascais area to play for our small club, because they, not just because of the brand, but also, of course, because they believe in the project, in division, but they also want to be part of this miniature Venezia type of story, right? So.
And I think as you build Estrella, this would be even stronger and stronger, right? Because then if you join a club like Cascais, then this opens the door to
the next possibilities one and the next
with
one.
Other teams.
Yeah. I think and maybe it's a small bridge to our ambition, right? So Estrella is a big ambition. We want to become the world's biggest MCO. Mm-hmm. And not just because we want the biggest numbers, but because we believe that with every club we add, there's an additional flywheel effect, right? So it's not one club plus one club plus one club. I think we actually get to a calculation where it's 1 plus 1.2 plus 1.2. So the flywheel is coming. So our ambition is to get into 5 clubs by the end of this year, 2025. And then buy into 10 clubs each consecutive year. Within 1.5 years, we might be the biggest MCO in the world from a numbers perspective, not necessarily from a revenue perspective, but from a numbers perspective. And this is when, Alessandro, as you alluded to, this is when the real kicker comes in, right? From a fan perspective, but also from a player perspective, of course. Because it's not all D6 clubs, right? We're talking about Division 1 clubs, Division 2. I think on average will probably be around Division 3, 2.5, 3. The clubs we're talking to now. So Cascais is the lower level club, but again, the brand perspective is amazing. The route for players, but also the technical stuff, etc. within those clubs is that their network expands as well exponentially. Right? I think that's a lot of impact for everybody involved.
Because how will clubs that are part of the horizontal MCO of Estrella be? How will they benefit from not only being part of the group, but also by delivering them digital technology?
Of course, the overarching company in Estrella is Leeds Ventures has a lot of network and a lot of technology and a lot of portfolio companies who benefit our clubs as well. Right. So two of the frameworks which are being developed by V2 Ventures are Club OS and Football OS, which are frameworks which are processes and technology solutions which are put into the clubs. So Club OS is everything off the pitch. So think about fan engagement, content, ticketing, things like
CRM
that.
systems.
CRM systems, and Football OS is everything on the pitch. Again, think about scouting systems, video review, video analysis, all those types of things. Camera systems. I think the real benefit for the clubs who join are multiple. Of course, a financial injection, network increase, being part of the story, part of the brand, access to technology, access to frameworks. But maybe the biggest is access to network. And I think one of the cool examples I can give there is that a couple of months ago, we sent two or three of our guys, the technical staff from Cascais, to Madrid to spend 2 days with the technical staff of Atletico, which is, of course, unfortunately not in our portfolio yet. Not yet. But it is actually a client of ours, to one of our other companies. So that is, I think, a very cool example of how a small club, but being part of something bigger, can have access to.
And I think you touched very interesting about you mentioned second division, third division. You know, I think the amazing thing about football is that these are all historic assets, right? Yep. With huge fan bases, emotions, tradition associated to it. And it's a shame to see that in a way that I think football in the end has evolved in a good way when it comes to maybe the business side, maybe the footballing side. Some, are nostalgic about how it used to be played, but I think everybody agrees that the gap between the top and these other teams is, in my opinion, I think many people agree, is a bit too wide at the moment. And I think, what Estrella can provide these kind of clubs is essentially a way to catch up and make sure the gap's not this big. And ultimately, this benefits everyone because nobody wants to watch a 6-7-0 game, right?
No.
And, so...
It's good for the exposure, though.
Yeah.
There are a lot of goals scored.
Yeah, but like 6-6 or something.
Yeah. No, so that's really important. Is that also something that you have seen when you were working for this other company that invested in Leeds? That there is actually synergies created with other clubs, or is that not?
I think at the time I think sports tech in general has been a very exciting industry to be in. There has been a lot of innovation, a lot of similar offering, like a lot of companies doing similar things. Yeah. And it was quite hard to, in the end, understand, how do you single out one particular product? Because, I met 5-6 great scouting softwares, right? In the end, you end up signing one.
I think that 4 years ago when I joined PEC Zwolle, they weren't using data at all. So we really need to transform the club into more data savvy. And then you also need to have the technology, of course, and that's quite expensive.
Yeah. And it's not always a priority, for teams, especially if it's not a priority it wasn't, but now it usually is for the big teams. But what, happened with the big teams 4 years ago or something, it's now happening to the second, third division teams. Like they need to catch up on the tech. And in my opinion, actually, it's better to do it by leveraging synergies with other teams, sister teams or MCO teams, as opposed to you venturing out and
because you would then be restricted to your own data and your own insights, right?
Correct,
if you would have the same insights from different sister clubs, anonymized, of course, but still have that insight, I think you have an unfair advantage for a club. I do think it's interesting though, because of course being part of a technology company, we talk about tech a lot, also about implementing tech for our clubs. I don't think, though, that it's the one-stop solution, right? So I just wanted to make that clear. I think tech is important, absolutely. But in the end, also the beauty about football is that it's
similar
not
with
a
data.
science, right?
Data
So-
is really helpful, but you should always see if a footballer can actually play football.
and how to interpret the data and et cetera.
And
So,
from which family he comes and what he's doing in his real actual life. So that is also, of course, influencing the game.
Yeah.
Then I think the other thing that MCOs in general benefit both sides is actually when it comes to commercial revenue. I think football sponsorship in general, partnerships is lived the golden age. It's tougher now. A lot of brands, especially digital native brands, they, sometimes they're like, why should I spend all this money on sponsoring a team where I can go to YouTube, Instagram, whatever?
I heard actually a great story about this because I heard that Manchester United and Wrexham were both discussing a sponsorship by United Airlines, where there's a logical fit between Manchester United, which is actually the biggest club in the world, and United Airlines. But they chose for Wrexham because Wrexham has the data of the younger generation. So it's more interesting to become a sponsor of Wrexham these days than of one of the biggest clubs of the world.
Brands are thinking about who's watching.
Brands want the data. So if you don't gather the fan data and you're not able to monetize the fan data, what does it then make sense to? What are you actually doing?
But also, one thing that I think is important is we'll always see, City, United, Real, Juve, these clubs will always have a sponsor. But what happens to the second division team? How can these teams then generate commercial revenue, which is a very important part of any club?
Wrexham signed with TikTok as a sponsor only because they had a TV series or video streaming service.
So you need to get creative. And I think being in an MCO helps because, again, strength in numbers. So, perhaps the brand is not happy about sponsoring just Cascais, but you suddenly tell them, hey, why don't you sponsor Estrella? And for that money, you get Cascais plus 3 other clubs. Diversify your investment.
Then it's not just around the reach of having 3 or 4 or 5 or 15 clubs. So it's a standard amount of fans times number of clubs, but it's the geolocation, the insights of the data behind it actually may be more important than just the numbers, right? So the insights on who is following which club, where, how, what they use for it to follow. I think that's where the real benefits come from sponsorships.
I think we touched upon all the topics that we wanted to discuss. Do you want to add something, Alessandro? What is your personal, basically, what's your ambition to join Estrella? Because you joined Estrella as our first employee, actually.
Yeah.
So what is the reason that you chose for Estrella, and what do you want to?
Hopefully, I can play number 10 in in one of the teams.
You want to live in South Italy, right?
Yeah. No, I think I was really drawn to the project. What we all discussed here, and I think what's being created is new. I haven't seen it before. What really drew me to it is the fact that it will allow me to experience football in different cultures, different teams, different levels, but then really trying to create an overarching strategy that benefits them all together. So I think this is very unique, I think as opposed to maybe just going into one club, it would allow me to, and everyone involved to really learn a lot more.
And where are the biggest chances?
Like
in the opportunities in which countries, markets.
I will always say Italy, of course.
Maybe we should expand on that a little bit, on why you would say Italy, because I think what's interesting for our viewers, and maybe we can come back to it at a later stage, that we've made this agreement, right? So the agreement is that whenever we buy an Italian club, and I think we actually agreed on one specific one, but now Alessandro said it's any Italian club. He gets
He's
one of
changing
my
already.
He gets one of my shirts, right? So
which shirt?
Exactly.
Let's widen the witnesses.
No.
Which shirt was it?
It was the last shirt of Totti worn by AS Roma, a signed one, which is in my office.
Now it's everywhere.
Now it's everywhere. So I've actually done you a favor.
Only if we publish this podcast.
Yeah,
that's true. This might get cut.
So when we finally sign one, we'll do another podcast and we'll give you the shirt.
No, but outside of Italy, what is the most interesting market,
I think I really like to see markets where two elements I like. I mean, always underlined there needs to be a passion for football. It doesn't have to be like a 100 years old passion, you know. Like for instance, a market I love is Japan. I think football has been growing exponentially there. Kids play really good quality of football. But
Good
then
attitude.
good
of the players,
attitude,
yeah.
work ethic, both the men and the women's sports, you know. But I think for me, obviously strong macroeconomic fundamentals, you know, growing economies where you have opportunities with sponsors to really invest in the teams, and media rights, because in the end, as we all know, TV rights is what really draws the value. I am a big fan of several markets in Europe. I think, Italy, jokes aside, is a great one. I think the TV rights are undervalued. I think culturally, you know, we have 4 stars on on the shirt. People love to play, and I think the business doesn't match the level yet. The business side doesn't match the football side. I think Poland's a great market, for example. You know, I think the
And
media
just seeing
rights.
TV rights, that triggers something with me, because I agree with you that most good clubs, they actually try to be in a higher league because then they get more TV revenues.
Yeah.
I think personally that clubs also should be focusing more on the younger generation, not only because this generation doesn't watch linear TV anymore, but you can also generate your own revenues by being present on YouTube or other platforms.
Yeah, especially in international markets, right? Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you
Great
very
stuff.
much, Alessandro.
Thank you.
It was really nice talking to you, and happy to have you on board of this.
Thanks. I'll
Really
be
great.
wearing a Totti shirt on the
Next
on the
week.
next
Next week.
episode. Yeah.
Great stuff.